Glad you could make it out here today. Like you said, I've been with the Department of Transportation for 29 years now, and kind of getting toward the end of my career. And spent a lot of time on the road, spent a lot of time in different carrier offices, looking at all kinds of paperwork. And like I said, right now, my duties are mainly working with an investigative team. It's the next way of saying I don't do anything anymore in the office. But every single review, compliance review, investigation that our folks do comes across my desk. I take a look at it. Every enforcement case that our office does comes across my desk. I'm kind of the bottleneck for everything, which is why I'm not really a field person anymore. The boss said, you're holding everything up. You got to get out of the field. The field is what I like, though. I like getting out, talking to different folks, doing the education, telling people how to get into compliance. So I handed out a book to everyone. Does everybody have one of these? If you don't, just raise your hand or you can come up and grab one. If you want more, let me know. The first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about this book. Everything I'm going to talk about today is in this book. This is a condensed version of the rules and regulations. There's some intrastate, some intrastate information in here. And what we've done, if you take a look, we've condensed pretty much everything here that is in this book and is in this book. So you might think what else is in there that you're not getting in there. A lot of stuff. But it's a very interesting book. We've had this book out for a number of years. One thing I'd like to ask you to do, if you have the time, and I know you're busy folks, everyone is, there's a website for our office in here. That's my website, but it's on the back page of this book. You can go in there and click on the survey. What they want to know is if this public, it's your tax dollars, you want us to keep putting out this book or don't you? If you don't, we're still going to do it, but it's all going to be online. But if you want an actual hard copy that you can carry in the trunk, have your drivers put it in the trunk, have it on your desk, for easy access, let us know. Like I said, I've been doing this for 29 years. I keep one of these on my desk. Right by my phone rings, somebody asks a question, I can't remember everything, I'll just grab this book and hold on a second. So, first thing I wanted to talk about. I want to tell you a little bit about myself before we really get going here and how I got into this. Now, nobody, myself included, grew up saying, hey, I want to be a DOT officer. How do you get here? Well, I grew up on a farm, actually, northwest Minnesota, a small town called Erskine. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that. It's up by Crookston, Grand Forks area. I grew up on a farm, and Erskine has a way station out on Highway 2, 4-lane highway going through town. There's a way station there. So I kind of got an idea, got to know some of those folks. They lived in the community. But I grew up on a farm. It was a small grain farm, and every fall, my dad would pull the trucks out of the weeds, pull them out of the shed, put gas in them, charge the batteries, fire them up, and away we'd go for the harvest. I was driving the grain truck loaded into the elevator, multiple elevators at about 13 years old. I didn't have a driver's license. It was just what we did back then. Trucks were old, trucks didn't have turn signals that worked, lucky if you had brake lights that worked, lucky if the brakes worked. I remember pumping those brakes with a full load of grain. Thinking, grab. That's the way it was back in those days. I didn't stay at the family farm, my brother did. I moved on, went up to college, whatever. Became a school teacher in South Minneapolis. So I went from a small town, northwest Minnesota, to Minneapolis Public Schools. A little bit of a transition there. Worked out okay, but there were a lot of gangs, things going on in the school. It was kind of a rough and tumble area. And I thought, I've had enough after about 5 years. I said, I got to get out of this. And friend of mine from up at the way station that's talking to him, and he said, hey, there's a job with DOT. They do a lot of education. You'd fit right in. So I made the application, I took all kinds of tests. Next thing I know, I get called for an interview, I get the job. And first day on the job, they threw me a badge, there's a keys to the car, there's some law books, learn this, and put me out on the road. I'm thinking, hey, where's the education? Now I'm an enforcement officer. But turns out there's a lot of education in what we do. We're not what you would call cops. We are a regulatory agency is what we are. So we'll get out, do these safety talks, we do enforcement, but along with the enforcement, we do an awful lot of education. That's our main focus. We're not out there to put anybody out of business. We're not out there to hammer on people. We just as soon you get into compliance so you don't end up like I did when I was a teenager driving a truck without a driver's license, without a medical card, without anything like that. That's kind of how I got into all of this. Again, Minnesota Department of Transportation. We are hooked up with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. In fact, we're hooked up with them so close that I do training, well I did training, I don't anymore, but I was a trainer for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. They would send me around the country to different states and train the troopers and the commercial vehicle inspectors on the Federal Motor Carrier regulations. So that's how close we are hooked up with the feds in Minnesota. In fact, all of our assignments that come into our office are made by the feds. So real close. We also work with the state patrol, but the feds are really our closest partners. So the purpose of today's session is kind of what I was talking about earlier. There's a lot of questions out there regarding driving rules, vehicle maintenance, what happens if you get into a crash, insurance, what's the definition of a commercial motor vehicle, when do my drivers need to be qualified, do they need drug and alcohol testing. All of these things we're going to hopefully answer for you today. If you have any questions as we go into each part, just raise your hand. I'll try to get to you as we can. However, this is an awful lot of information to cover in what we have an hour and a half. So we'll get to what we get to, what we don't. The rest is in here. You can make a phone call. Trust me, we don't track the phone calls and see who's asking because they're in violation. That's a question we get all the time. Folks say, well, I wanted to ask you, but I was afraid then you'd come up to my business and find me. We would rather get you into compliance. So don't worry about calling us. We're not going to trace the call or anything like that. So the agenda really is we're going to identify a few things. What is a private carrier? What is a commercial motor vehicle? And there's more than one definition of commercial motor vehicle. Talk a little bit about intrastate commerce, interstate commerce, and what safety regulations apply to you, and talk a little bit about some of the common violations that I've seen over the years. And then we'll answer some questions. So, any questions so far? Remember a couple definitions. Now everybody in here, just based upon why I'm here, I'm going to fathom a big guess that you're all private carriers, but I want to cover real quick what the difference is. There's really 3 different types of carriers in Minnesota. 4 hire carriers, private carriers, and then something we call exempt carriers. So for hire carrier, and this is the definition right out of the book, for remuneration, that's a funny word, for compensation of any kind, promised, paid, or given to or received by a person for the transportation of persons or property on the highways. It doesn't include a private carrier. So what it means, UPS, Yellow Freight, those folks are for hire carriers. Somebody pays them to transport any given commodity. And that's what they're in the business, they're a trucking company. Folks in here, I'm going to say, are private carriers because you don't do that. Nobody calls you up on the phone and says, hey, I I've got a load of gravel, I want you to transport this, and I'll give you $1,000 to do so. Odds are you don't do that. You might. But that's what a for-hire carrier is. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because my guess is most of you are private carriers. Private carrier means the person engaged in the transportation of property or passengers by motor vehicle when the person transporting the property or passengers is engaged in a business other than transportation. So in other words, you're in the landscape business, you're in the masonry business, you're in the road construction business, that kind of thing. Transportation is incidental to your primary business. You're not a trucking company. Transportation is within the scope and furthers a primary business other than transportation. Examples: a plumber transporting their own tools and equipment. They got a truck, they got their own tools and equipment, but it's private. Landscaper transporting a skid loader, landscape materials for use at job sites, snow removal, plowing snow. You've got the truck out there, you might even haul the snow away after you plow it. Private carrier, but the carrier could be both for hire and private. Your neighbor comes along and asks you to transport a load of gravel for him. You're not using that as part of your project. You're just transporting it for them. He pays you. Now you're a for-hire carrier. Other rules kick in for you. Mainly registration, you cross state lines, authority, insurance, etc. But I'm not going to go there today. So private carriers are subject to the same regulations as for-hire, except insurance and operating authority. Questions so far? Yep.
What about like a nursery that delivers mulch or rock to a job site? Is that truck in that circumstance then a for-hire?
Sounds like private carrier, so the nursery grows the stock or they
get it in
purchase
bulk.
it, they get it in bulk, it comes to rest, they sell it, deliver it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say private carrier. Remember, the for-hire is that somebody pays you just to do that. But if you're selling it, you're in the nursery business, you're in the landscape business, and you sell different things, which you do. That's private carriage. I always use the guy who's building furniture. Some of the folks build furniture, but they got a truck, they're hauling their chairs to the furniture store, selling it to a private carriage. Exempt carriage, I'm not going to go into right now. I'm going to get into a little bit later because a lot of you also fit the definition of an exempt carrier. But we're going to get into that a little bit later. So what is a commercial motor vehicle? Another question that comes up all the time. Like I said earlier, there's really two definitions of commercial motor vehicle, and they all relate upon to the size of the vehicle, and that depends on which state and or federal regulations that apply to you, and also the activity. Are you engaged in interstate or intrastate commerce? And what's the intent of the trip at the beginning of the transportation? The general rule of what a commercial motor vehicle is we're going to take a look at the gross vehicle weight, gross combination weight, or combination weight rating, gross vehicle weight rating, and if it's 10,001 pounds or more, you're going to be driving a commercial motor vehicle. That's both in the state of Minnesota and in interstate commerce if you cross state lines. So, intrastate commerce, a person engaged in for-hire transportation of property regardless of size is subject to all of these rules.
Did you say anybody over 10,001
Yep, 10,001 or
is
more
now a commercial vehicle?
is a commercial vehicle, yes.
So all these guys driving horse trailers.
Pickup truck pulling a snowmobile trailer, if that combination goes over 10,000 pounds.
So then they're
commercial
required to
vehicle.
do all the medical.
Yep. The caveat I'm going to put in there is for a business purpose. which is why we don't pull in to the retired folks that have a travel trailer and they're heading down to Florida for the winter. They're not subject to this because they're not in commerce. It's not for a business. Okay. What do I say? For hire, intra-state, within the state of Minnesota, anybody for hire is subject to these rules and regulations. That's why you see a lot of these little courier trucks that got their name on the side. It's not just for advertising, they're required to have that. So they might be operating a Ford Fiesta. They're subject to all of these rules because they are for hire. Person engaged in private carriage, otherwise 10,001 pounds or more intrastate commerce. So, how do you determine the vehicle weight? A couple different ways. What we do on the roadside primarily is we're going to take a look at that VIN plate. Usually on the door jamb, it's going to tell you right there what the gross vehicle weight rating is. On a trailer, it's on the tongue, frame rail, front left corner of the trailer. The other way to look at it is an actual weight. I saw you had a scale out here someplace. So you can pull a truck on the scale or a cat scale or whatever you want to actually weigh it. We're going to take a look at that. Or we're going to run a program. We're going to take the VIN number of either the trailer or the power unit. We're going to run it through this program and it'll tell us what the manufacturer says it is. So a couple of examples here. Just an example of a Ford gross vehicle weight rating, 37,200 pounds. And that one says it's an incomplete vehicle, but usually by the time we look at them, they're complete. So that would definitely be a commercial motor vehicle. Cat scale ticket, go across the scale, over 10,000 pounds. We're going to take a look at, this one's a little bit old, and you got the steer axle, drive axle, trailer axle, and gross weight, over 10,000 pounds. And this one is off the internet, CMVID. All you got to do is plug in the VIN number. It's going to tell you this particular one, 2007 Freightliner, gross vehicle weight rating greater than 33,000 pounds. That's for a tractor. Every one of these tractors is going to be over 33,000 pounds. So keep that in mind. Okay, questions so far on that? Well, like I said, there's actually two definitions of commercial motor vehicle. The one I talked about was 10,001 pounds or more, and I'm not going to get into the passengers. I won't get into hazardous materials other than to say you have black cardable amounts of hazardous materials, the truck you are driving is now a commercial motor vehicle, regardless of size. I don't know if you get into that, but keep that in mind. Yep.
How about the practice of diesel tractor build whole business
hazardous material, so you're saying it's you have a tank of diesel on there, that is hazardous material. Yep, that is hazardous material. That would not be black cardable amount because diesel, which really there's all kinds of exceptions for diesel fuel, for black carding, but generally that's a table 2. I don't have my hazmat book with me, but that's a table 2 commodity, and you're going to be looking at larger amounts. So basically usually about 1,000 pounds.
driver has to be certified.
Yep. Driver's going to have to be qualified. We'll get into that in just a few minutes here. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. But I threw out some terms here, interstate, intrastate, and that's another thing that confuses a lot of folks. I probably worked in this job for 6 months before I knew the difference between interstate and intrastate. And I was supposed to be out on the road enforcing. So, what is Interstate transportation. What is interstate commerce? That just kind of shows the training we got rid of. Anyway, trade, traffic, or transportation in the United States between a place in the state and a place outside of that state. So you drive from here, you go to, let's say, Hudson, Wisconsin. That's a question we get all the time. I only went to Hudson. Well, did you cross the border? Yes. Hudson is in Wisconsin. That is now interstate commerce. A little bit different rules. Not much different, but a little bit different. We'll get into that. Between two places in the state, through another state, or a place outside of the United States. Drive up into Canada. Canada is a foreign country, and now we're talking, even though it's not a state, it's considered interstate commerce. Or between two places in a state as part of trade, traffic, or transportation, originating or terminating outside of that state. That'd be the Canadian one. Give you an example here. Actually disappeared. So, from Minnesota to Indiana is interstate commerce. Okay, intrastate commerce. Intrastate commerce is any trade, traffic, transportation in any state which is not described in the term interstate. So anyway, everything point to blank within Minnesota. Again, a little bit different. I'm going to run over this real quick. There we go. Up in Alloc, down to the Rochester area, point to point. You got to pick up there, so you drive up there, pick something up in Alloc, and you're delivering it down by Rochester. It never left the state. Intrastate commerce, usually. The point that I wanted to get there, and I think my slide just looked up on me there. The other thing that I wanted to point out is the nature of the load. If you picked up a load on that previous screen up at Alloc, but that load originated over here in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Somebody else brought it to Alloc, but they knew up front its destination was Rochester. That is the nature of the load. The nature of that load is interstate because it originated in Grand Forks, North Dakota, up to Alloc. You picked it up there. It was destined for Rochester. So they knew all along it was going to Rochester. That makes it interstate commerce. So I just wanted to make that point. Questions about that at all? So, when safety regulations apply, again, interstate, 10,001 pounds or more, intrastate, for hire any size, otherwise 10,001 pounds or more. We get into a little bit later some of the exceptions, so let's jump over to registration. You got interstate commerce, you got intrastate commerce. Who needs a DOT number? Both. Minnesota is one of the states, even if you're intrastate only, you must have a US DOT number. This you can find on the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration website, the Unified Registration System, which is supposed to be simplifying US DOT registration. So you just go on there, fill out all your information. US DOT calls it a census number. That's the other term they have for that. It's a census number. What they're doing is they want to know who's out there with a truck, how many trucks you have, and how many drivers you have. So that's why they call it a census number. They also want to know what kind of commodities you're hauling. Are you hauling dirt and sod? Are you hauling hazardous materials? What is it you're hauling? They're going to gather all of that information. That number will be issued to you immediately upon filling out that application. It'll just come online, and then you'll have a US DOT number, but you will be in the system. If you operate across state lines, somebody's going to contact you within a few months and say, hey, you're subject to the new entrant safety program. And they're going to usually just give you a call on the phone and say, can you send over some stuff, we want to take a look at it. They're going to ask basic information about driver qualifications, drug and alcohol, driver's license, to make sure that you know the rules of the road. And like I said, it's a safety education part of the program. Vehicle marking. So what do you do with that DOT number? Oh, question.
The unified carrier thing on the last screen, is that something that has to be updated yearly, bi-yearly?
Every 2 years. If you're an interstate carrier, Minnesota doesn't require that. We recommend that you do it every 2 years.
Okay.
I would also recommend anytime you have major changes, let's say you started out with one truck, one driver, you know, a year later you hired 10 drivers, you got 10 trucks. That's a bit of a change in your business. I'd say go online and update it.
So you said you gotta re-register your DOT every 2 years?
Yeah, you don't have to re-register it, they just want you to go in there and update it.
Okay, that's that website.
Yep, that's that website.
And that was unified carrier report,
Yep,
right?
Unified Carrier Registration.
Okay.
What they're,
Is that it here?
yep, it is in the book. It's in the book. Toward the back, it'll say how to obtain a US DOT number. There's a website there, same one that's on here. And you just go in and do the update. You'll be issued, when you get a DOT number, you'll be issued a PIN. So it's your number, stays with your company. It goes on all of your trucks, what I'm gonna get to next. That number goes on your trucks, the same number on all of your trucks, and it belongs to you. You're the only one that can actually get into the system with your PIN numbers, it's like a password, and you can update your information. Obviously, US DOT can get in there, and we're not allowed to change things. That wouldn't be it. Okay, marking requirements. What do you do with that DOT number? Put your legal business name or doing business as name and US DOT number on the power unit. So in this case, there's a straight truck. Tom's Lawn Care, US DOT number. It's on the box, but that's good, as long as it's on the power unit. He was pulling a trailer, you don't want the DOT number on there. There's no prohibition on it, but if you don't have it on the power unit, only on the trailer, would be a violation. It's kind of a minor violation. I've seen some gooseneck trailers out there where they'll have it right up on the neck itself, US DOT number. That's a violation. I don't think anybody's going to worry too much about that. Point is, you've got a US DOT number. You're registered. Markings, again, must be of sharply contrasting colors. Example, black and white. I've seen some where you can barely read it. I don't really want, they want to get stylish with the numbers, you can barely read it, and it's a violation. It's not sharply contrasting. Again, minor violation. Visible from 50 feet away, I've seen them really small because people want to use their 1-ton pickup to pull their boat on the weekend or going up the lake. They don't want that DOT number showing. They'll put it as small as they can. If you want to use your commercial vehicle for private use, I'd recommend getting one of those magnetic strips if you want to cover it up. Just cover it up. Just one of those. They're pretty durable. Yeah, they might come off, but usually they don't. Both sides of the power unit. Minnesota law changed not that many years ago. It used to just say on the power unit. Then we had some smart ass guy put it on the roof. And he said, no, it's on there. It's on the roof. Nobody can see it. So anyway, they changed the law, put it both sides. And say both sides, state now says both sides. So, questions about that? Oh, when it gets dirty, this time of year, make sure you wipe it off, make it clean. I've seen roadside folks pull over a truck because the USDOT number is not visible. And once they get you pulled over, that could lead to other bad things. So my recommendation would be clean. Show your number, show your business name.
What is for the pickup truck, 150
Yep.
to 50,
Yep.
when they have to use the number,
So if you've got an F-150, F-250, F-250 is probably going to go, what, about 8,500 pounds by itself, gross vehicle weight rating, give or take 9,000 pounds. You get into the 350s, those are definitely going to be, I've seen those go 13,000, 14,000 pounds depending on the configuration. So, but an F-150, 7,000, 7,500, you put a trailer on the back of that, you're going to get over 10,000 pounds combination weight rating, you'll need that DOT number display. So that's the thing, take a look at the gross vehicle weight rating. Again, if you got a pickup truck and that says 8,000 pounds, you're pulling a small trailer, that trailer says 2,500 pounds, just add the two together, and you're over 10,000 pounds. You need that DOT number displayed. And you're gonna need all the other regulations that we're talking about. Yep.
Say your pickup is 7,500 pounds, you're pulling a trailer, does that pickup, 3/4 ton pickup need to be DOT inspected and have a sticker on the windshield?
Okay, and we're gonna get to that because
Okay.
that's the other definition. I'll go there right now, but we'll cover it again later. In Minnesota, if that vehicle never leaves the state, the threshold, weight threshold for the annual inspection is 26,001 pounds, either single or in combination. But if you were to cross state lines with that combination, let's say your combination is 16,000 pounds, you never leave the state, does not need to be annually inspected, you don't need that sticker in the windshield. But let's say you run over to Hudson with it, let's say you got a job over in someplace near the border, and you ever cross over to go on the lodge, you're taking that commercial vehicle across state lines, now it needs an annual inspection, 10,001 pounds interstate. That's one of the differences I wanted to talk about, and we'll touch on that later. 26,000 pounds for annual inspection if you don't leave the state, 10,001 pounds. Pretty okay on that?
This truck and trailer need to be,
Truck and trailer would both need to be inspected and have the sticker on it. Okay, leased vehicle, if you rent one for a short period of time, you've got 30 days, basically, to put your name and DOT number on it. You get a vehicle from Ryder, get it from wherever, Penske, on the picture. With it, if you have it less than 30 days, you can just leave the Penske markings and DOT number on there. You gotta carry your lease agreement in the truck though. There was one commercial vehicle inspectors who would call at least 4 times a year, the phone would ring and she says, I've got a Ryder truck pulled over to the side here and I don't know, do I write this up to Ryder? I was like, no, yeah. Take a look at the lease agreement. Who's operating that truck? Those are the folks that are going to get the inspection. It's not going to be Ryder or Penske. However, I would venture if I were to pull up Penske, Ryder, any one of those folks, U-Haul, they're going to have a ton of inspections because nationwide that mistake happens. The inspector on the side of the road is going to grab that DOT number, put it on the inspection report. It's all automatic, so all that info goes to Penske, Ryder, U-Haul, whatever. Incorrect. shift over to accidents. One of the things, other than dealing with the accident right then and there and calling the police or the state patrol, reportable accident for DOT purposes, we have what's called a reportable accident. It's defined as an occurrence involving a commercial motor vehicle operating on a highway in inter or intrastate commerce results in a fatality, bodily injury to a person that requires treatment away from the scene, immediate treatment away from the scene, and any vehicle towed from the scene due to disabling damage. Now, disabling damage is an interesting term because I just dealt with one a week ago. The guy had a tractor trailer. He was going over a railroad track. The train came by and hit his trailer. Guess he wasn't looking. So the trailer went spinning around. It was a minor glancing blow. He rehooked, drove the thing home. That was determined to be not disabling damage. I mean, he couldn't really take it on his trip, but he brought it back home and did the repair work, but wasn't disabling. Flat tires, not disabling. Anything that could be repaired on the scene, basically, with ordinary tools, is not considered disabling for DOT purposes. Oh, let's see this place. Yeah. Yep, question.
If you're involved in an accident, maybe you're gonna cover this. You know, a friend of mine got involved in a fatal,
Yep.
and they went back into his shop immediately, and they went through everything.
Yep.
How much documentation and how long you have to keep it for you guys?
For the truck?
I mean, they went through everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Every repair on every vehicle, how much data do we have to keep, and for how long?
Well, for that truck that he was driving right there, that even if he bought that truck back in 1978, everything that he did with that truck has to be kept for as long as he owns that vehicle. And then some. Actually got to keep it longer than that. But for somebody in an accident like that, like you said, somebody's going to come out there, they're going to go through the maintenance files, they're going to go through the driver files, probably drug and alcohol testing if it's applicable to that driver. And all of those records are going to be required to be kept. Each one has a little different retention policy. Like hours of service, some of those things you can get rid of within 6 months. But other things like maintenance files you're going to keep. Some of the other driver qualification files you can keep forever, as long as the driver is employed. So all of that is going to be found in the book under vehicle maintenance, at least for the vehicle stuff. An accident register, this is information you're going to want to write down for the DOT. The date of the accident, where it occurred, driver name and number of injuries, fatalities, what was being hauled, so hazardous materials. This is all in an accident register. On top of that, you want to keep all of your accident reports, anything you get from your insurance company, document everything that you have with an accident register, document it. Like you said, somebody's probably going to come out and take a look at all of that. Might as well gather it together. Depends on the severity of the crash, too, though. The minor ones, we're only going to look at really if we come out. If it's a major fatality, we had one here not that long ago where it was hazardous material. The guy was offloading some hazmat at a McDonald's in the North Metro area. For some reason he went inside the back of the trailer where he had the tank, and the door closed, and actually went in there twice. Part of it was part of the emergency response, because we found the guy dead. His truck was in there idling. Well, where is the guy? We found him inside dead. So they called the hazmat, well, the duty officer who reported it to one of our hazardous materials guys. He went out there and, well, the scene was active. And then afterward, USDOT and one of our folks went in, went into the company and took a look at the records. In that particular case, they wanted to look at hazardous materials training file. Was that driver trained? And as it turned out, no, he was not. He wasn't trained adequately in the hazards he was dealing with. So the company on that particular, the feds handled that part of it, but I'm pretty sure that the company had a pretty hefty fine for that, as well as OSHA gave something on all that. So, keep records, that's the main thing about this, keep records. Driver qualification. I mentioned other files, driver qualification files. When you hire a driver, or you own a company, when you get behind the wheel of a truck, you are a driver, even if you own the company. One of the other questions I get, phone call rings, well, I got stopped and the guy asked me for a medical card. Well, I don't have one, I own the company, I don't need one. Yeah, you're wearing two hats, owner of the company, the other hat you're wearing is as a driver. You're a driver for your own company. Each driver that you put behind the wheel must be 21 years old if they cross state lines. Otherwise, they must be 18 years old. Keep that in mind. Summertime rolls around and you're hiring some high school kids. They're not 18, they can't be operating your trucks if they are over 10,001 pounds. So keep that in mind. It's another question we see all the time. They cannot run a pickup truck, it's less than 10,000 pounds. Put that trailer on the back of the pickup truck, they can't operate it until they're 18 intrastate. Keep that in mind. Must be able to read and speak English sufficiently to communicate with law enforcement. Know how to read signs, stop signs, yield signs, that kind of thing. By reason of experience, training, or both, safely operate the vehicle, and you're going to want to do that regardless of what the law says. I mean, you don't want somebody who can't operate your truck driving your truck down the road. Has a currently valid commercial driver's license or a non-commercial driver's license if commercial is not required. Make sure they have an active license and that it's good. Has prepared and furnished the motor carrier, and that's you, the motor carrier, that employs them with all the moving violations that they have incurred in the last 12 months. And really, again, that's government kind of being the big brother saying, hey, you better look after this guy before you hire him. Take a good look at him. Is not disqualified to drive. We see that all the time. And has successfully completed a road test. If it's a non-commercial vehicle, commercial driver's license vehicle, you got to give them a road test. You got to document that. If they have a commercial driver's license, a copy of that commercial driver's license is good enough. And they meet all the physical qualifications. Medical qualifications, again, no impairment of hand, finger, arm, eyes. That's going to affect the ability to operate a commercial vehicle. No established history of diabetes, whatever. Insulin dependent, if it is controlled by diet, that's fine. If they're insulin dependent, there are some medical waivers, a little bit difficult to get, but they have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get a medical waiver. Where are we? Yeah, no particular heart, respiratory, neurological, bone, muscle conditions that interfere with the operation. Vision and hearing standards, 20/40 minimum each eye independently. That's corrected. They can wear eyeglasses, obviously. But you run into folks every now and then, they'll wear eyeglasses and they're still, one of the eyes just can't be corrected to better than 20/50, 20/60, whatever. We run into that. Somebody with a glass eye, don't have vision in one eye, they gotta have vision in both eyes or get a medical waiver. Not a current drug user and no current diagnosis of alcoholism. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody coming out of AA can't drive for you. Obviously they can. What they're talking about is somebody who is a current drinking alcoholic, cannot pass the medical exam.
Can you find a guy without qualification driving the deal with a commercial vehicle?
So how do you find the driver?
How do you find in your duties?
How do we find that?
Did you find some?
Yep, we find that all the time. We're gonna take a look at the medical card. If they have a commercial driver's license, they're required to send that medical card in to DMV, and it'll be on their record when we run it. Otherwise, we'll take a look at the card. I ran across one about 2 years ago. The guy altered the date himself. I sat in my car and as I'm writing things up, I looked at it, and as I set it down, I noticed there was a slight glint on the expiration date. And I looked closer, and he had taken his own pen and wrote over the expiration date. So I just called the clinic because the number is on there. I called the clinic and told them who I was, and I said, I want the expiration date. Yeah, he had expired a few months earlier. So I wrote him a ticket. Yep.
When you say commercial vehicle license, is that anything over a C?
Yeah, actually a class, anything over a D. Class C
No.
now is a commercial driver's
So you
license.
could, like driving a dump truck at 26,000 pounds under with a medical card, you're not a commercial vehicle.
Right, that doesn't require a commercial driver's
Don't need
license. You can still do that on a class D.
Right, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Now we'll jump into that. We just gotta walk some time here and see where we get. So, let's move on. Okay, non-CDL drivers must carry that medical card with them. CDL drivers do not have to carry it with them, but they must self-certify. The medical examiner's certificate is what it's called. And all exams as of May 21st, 2014 must be conducted by an examiner that's listed on the National Registry of Medical Examiners. The reason they did that was there were a lot of folks out there that were basically, okay, give me $50, pretty much write it out, here's your card. They were running into a lot of folks that just didn't meet the minimum qualifications. Qualifications for operating a commercial vehicle, very similar to that of flying an airplane. And I asked that one time, I said, well, why are the standards so high? And the answer I got back was, if a guy driving an airplane crashes, probably gonna kill the driver, the guy, the pilot, and whatever passengers are in there. Person has an episode and crashes with a commercial vehicle, they're out on the freeway, they're gonna take not only themselves out, but multiple cars. And there's many, many, many more trucks on the road and cars than there are planes in the sky. I don't know, it kind of makes a little bit of sense. The odds of injury and fatality are much greater. Anyway, the National Registry, copy of a medical card, you know what that looks like. We run the driver's license check. It's going to tell us if they have a medical card on file. Copy of the National Registry again. And let's get into the DQ file. So far, any questions? Any other questions? Yep.
So I'm from Wisconsin. Will that pull up like Wisconsin information off my driver's license when you guys run stuff and show that I have a med card through Wisconsin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. You have a commercial driver's license in Wisconsin. We're going to run that. It's going to show up. We'll run it one of two different ways. Each state is involved. It's called the SIDLIS report. So I can go in on my computer, run the SID list report, and it's gonna pull from any state in the nation. Also aliases and many other licenses that you've had in the past years are gonna show up. If you changed your name, anything like that's gonna show up. You get a little deeper into the system, it'll go into your criminal record. It's supposed to be driving record. Driver qualification files. Cover that real quick. Any driver you have operating a commercial motor vehicle over 10,000 pounds again, you must have driver qualification file. The purpose of that is to make sure you've done your homework and that driver is safe to operate. Each driver qualification file, again, is in the book. You must have a DOT application for employment, not just a regular application for employment. It's got to be a DOT application for employment. That's going to ask a lot of driving-related questions. How many moving violations? What is your history of driving a commercial driver's license or commercial vehicle? A lot of different information related to driving. So make sure it is a DOT. Copy of the MDR from each state that the driver has operated in the last 3 years or 10 years if it's a commercial driver's license. You're going to get that information directly from the Department of Public Safety in the state of Minnesota. Again, information is going to be in this book, how to get that information. Generally, we're out there looking, if you got a friend who's a cop and he wants to violate the law and run for you, I would accept that he's going to get in trouble for doing that. So I wouldn't ask a friend who's a cop to do that. Certain insurance companies will run that quite often because they want to take a look at the drivers, make sure they're qualified to operate. If they're willing to give you that information, great, put it in the file. Certificate of road test, we already talked about that, or a copy of the CDL is in there, copy of the medical certificate, or, like I said, the SID list report. Again, the SID list report, you're going to get that directly from the Department of Public Safety. Certification of the medical examiner on the National Registry, you're going to go into that website, it's in that book, make sure that they had a proper medical doctor that performed that exam. Medical waiver covered, written record of investigation of past employers in 3 years, and that's the background check. Contact those previous employers, you're required to do that, and the previous employer is required to give you that information. So if somebody contacts you and says, you've probably seen those forms, you know, as a driver is applying for jobs for me, and I ask you, I send you a letter, and I say, oh, here's the form, you can fill it out. So they ask, how long did he drive for you? Say, moving violations, a lot of different information. You're required to give me that information. And again, background history of the driver. I'm going to hire a guy, I want to know his safe. Driver's annual list of certificate related to violations. Once a year, the driver is required to give you a list of any moving violations. In other words, they're required to tell you if they have a speeding ticket. They're required to tell you, hey, I lost my license because I had a DUI. So you don't inadvertently put somebody on the road without a driver's license. Question? Okay, some of the driving rules. Okay, no driver shall operate a commercial motor vehicle, and you can't require the driver to operate if they are impaired due to fatigue or illness. Now, the state of Minnesota went through a deal several years ago, and we watched some videos where somebody shows up at the waist scale, and this guy's got a horrible cold, his nose is dripping, he's hacking and coughing, eyes are bloodshot, he's slugging down the Robitussin, and the whole idea is, are you safe to operate that 80,000-pound truck down the road? And the answer of the video was, no. The guy said, I'm really tired. No, you're out of service until you're better, until you get some rest, until you're able to safely operate. So Ill or fatigue. There are exemptions for hours of service. We get a little time here, we'll get into that. I was in a company that was doing sand and gravel. They're exempt from the hours of service, but they were running these guys in the summer 18 to 20 hours a day. Go home, 3-4 hours rest, come back. Drivers were making a ton of money, but were they safe? Probably not. They were fatigued. Drivers are fatigued. You get phone calls like that. The boss is running me ragged. I'm falling asleep behind the wheel. What can I do? Can't operate fatigue. So keep that in mind. Drug use and possession. It's unlawful. Possess, of course, or to be on under the influence. Any Schedule I controlled substance, amphetamines, formulation thereof, narcotics, marijuana, anything. Again, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. We had a guy pull onto the scale 2 years ago. I happened to be out there, and partner went out there, and the guy rolled down the window, and the smoke was come billowing out. There were 3 guys in there. It was just like a old Cheech and Chong, hey man. Billowing smoke, and he says, yeah, excuse me a minute. He goes, I'll be right back with you. I gotta go inside. He went inside and he called the guy with the drug dog. So a trooper shows up. He's got the shepherd with him, and he says, okay. Goes up there and he asks the guy, he says, what do you got? You got any with you? And they're like, oh no, man, we smoked it all. And he says, I'm gonna ask you one more time. He goes, if you're honest with me, he says, I'll be lenient with you. He goes, if you're not, I'm going to turn the dog loose in the pockets. There it is. Here's everything he got. And he was honest to his word. He didn't bring him to jail. He released him into the custody of his employer, all 3 of them. And when the owner of the company showed up, he just shook his head. He goes, again? A lot of crazy stuff. Alcohol use and possession is unlawful to use or be under the influence of alcohol while you're working within 4 hours of coming on duty. Again, roadside, guy rolls the window down, you can smell it. And you guys can lose it. Be under the use or be under the influence of alcohol or have a measurable presence of alcohol while on duty, and that's when you can smell it on the breath. That's a violation. You can't be out there doing that. Guy puts in a hard night, gets to work at 5 in the morning, and it's still in the system, it's still spewing fumes out of his pores. The other one, this is the one that gets everybody. Last time I talked before this group, I brought this up, but I got phone calls like you wouldn't believe. You cannot possess alcohol while on duty. In other words, you got that commercial vehicle, you're on your way home with that either. You can't stop at the off sale and pick up a six-pack. You can't have it in the trunk. Yeah, that's illegal. It has to be, unless it's a manifested part of the load. Now, the argument is you can just grab your notepad and write in there, 1 12-pack of Budweiser. It's manifested, put it in the back. Yeah, probably. I'm not going to be too hard on folks over that, as long as they're not drinking it, but I've seen other folks. It is against the law. It's an odd service violation. Yep.
If you have a commercial vehicle license and you're not on duty, is your tolerance less than 0.08?
No. If you're not on duty, you're not operating a commercial vehicle.
What's the tolerance on duty?
Yep. On duty,
Is it 0.04?
0.04 operating a commercial motor vehicle, and that's the 26,001 pound or more threshold. The smaller vehicle would be at 0.08, regardless of whether you have a commercial driver's license. It really goes to what you're driving. 0.04 are the bigger trucks. But possessing alcohol on duty, like I said, the last time I brought this up, I got a call from some guy way up north. And he said, I talked to a buddy who talked to a buddy. He said he was at this seminar and somebody said this. That was me. Yeah. And So that, the word really spread, about 3 years ago, I think, when I did this the last time. Now, that being said, I ran into a guy at the same price scale 2 years back. He was a semi-retired guy, he was an older guy, pulls onto the scale, and I'm talking to him, and I'm going through my check, and I was asking for his fire extinguisher and warning triangles. He goes, fire extinguisher's on the floor on the other side. So he goes, door's open. So I walked around there, opened the door, and there's that cases of lining coolers. So I just, hey, what do you got this for? I'm bringing it to my son. He was from Wisconsin. He's coming in there. So I said, I'm bringing it to my son because he's going fishing and he wanted some linings so we can get it cheap out there. And technically, I should have put the guy out of service. I'll admit I did not. He obviously wasn't drinking. I told him, I said, take it, put it in the back, lock it. And I said, I'll cut you a break here. I probably could have gotten in trouble. What if the guy started guzzling beer? I don't think he was going to. I don't think he did. But it was a judgment call on my part. But most folks out there are not going to cut you any slack. For that reason, the guy started drinking down the road later and he crashes. They could have traced that back. Hey, you inspected the guy, you would have seen that. And I thought better of that over the years. So that was several years ago. Okay, any questions so far? We're running short on time here, I know, but some of the other things I want to touch on. Equipment, inspection, and use. Make sure before that truck goes out in the morning, take a look at the brakes, parking brake, handbrake, steering, make sure everything in that truck, horn, windshield wipers, all of that is in good operating condition. Because you don't want to get stopped and get written up. Anytime you get stopped and you get written up, everybody with a US DOT number has a score related to their DOT number. That score goes up with each violation. Hits a certain threshold, and we're going to talk about that a little later. That's when we come out and take a look at all the records of the company. And you don't want to see this. Trust me, you don't want to see this. So, railroad crossings, I talked to you a little bit about that. Use caution. There's so many times we run into somebody gets hit on the railroad track. You'd think you see a train coming, but hey, people get busy. I've gone over this railroad track 1,000 times. All of a sudden there's a train there. So don't stop on the tracks. Hazardous conditions, extreme caution, 50-car pile up. 2014, I think they had a 50-car pile up in Wisconsin here a couple weeks ago during one of these storms. You all know how that happens, so just a word of caution. Radar detectors, illegal. You probably already know that. Illegal in a commercial motor vehicle. You can have it in your car yet, but not in the truck. Not in the truck. Seatbelt usage. Proper use of seat belts. Again, not going to spend a lot of time on that. But it is, other than to say that is one of the violations that is written up regularly. Especially in your type of industry, you're in and out of the truck a lot. A lot of drivers just don't want to bother to buckle up. And what happens is they're witnessed out on the road without that thing going across. Texting while driving. It's unlawful to text. In fact, it's unlawful to have your cell phone in your hand while you're operating a commercial motor vehicle. Again, you see that all the time. Truck going down the road, guy's got his phone to his ear. It's illegal. He ends up getting pulled over, and that's a major violation, again, on that score that I talked about, that everybody with the USB number has. That's a major violation. It's illegal both federally and state. And it also includes, well, it's illegal stop sign. Won't do it. Handheld mobile telephone use, again, just talked about that. Penalties for a carrier, 2 convictions within 3 years, 60-day disqualification, $275 driver penalty, get to the carriers, to $11,000. So make sure you tell your drivers, keep those phones in their pocket or in the trailer. Don't. Hands-free is permissible. Questions about that?
When you say hands-free, does that mean have?
Yep, hands-free, so they can have it in a cradle. The rule really says, while they're seated behind the wheel, within arm's reach, they can push the button and then talk hands-free. That's the thing.
Can't have it in your hand.
Can't have it in your hand.
Can't
And,
dial numbers.
no,
No.
can't do it. And most of the phones now, you can just talk at it. It's not that great, but you can talk at most of the phones that are hands-free. Call Joel. Hours of service, first on this real quick. All carriers subject to the hours of service regulations, regardless if they're operating inter or intrastate commerce. And there's a federal regulations that have been adopted by the state of Minnesota. Almost all. Depending on the day, a driver could be considered either a logbook or ELD drivers. We cover ELDs just briefly also. 100 air mile radius driver, 150 air mile radius driver, or intrastate exempt, which you're going to be over to that group every now and then. But the logbook, just the last one slide. Okay, the logbook, everybody knows that grid pattern that truck drivers use. If you don't meet one of the exemptions, then you're required to fill that out. Go it up. 100 air mile radius driver. If you meet the 100 air mile radius driver exemption, what that means is that you are staying within a 100 air mile radius of your normal work reporting location. You do not have to fill out the logbook for those days. You do have to keep true and accurate time records as a 100 air mile radius driver.
What is the difference between 100 air miles and 1,000 miles?
Okay, 100 air miles are the same as 100 nautical miles. No idea what this is doing, but what it does is it accounts for the curvature of the earth, apparently, in a nautical mile, and I think it comes out to 115.8 statute miles, straight miles. And so that's the difference between an air mile and a regular mile. So air mile is 115.8 regular road miles. The 100 air mile radius exemption can be used for a CDL driver. If you're a non-CDL driver, smaller vehicle, you get 150 air miles. And that, all that means is you can operate within that circle of your normal work reporting location, go 150 miles out, go that circle, without preparing a logbook. Excuse me. You still must have true and accurate time records showing start time, end time, total hours on duty. And the other caveat is your driver must be released from work within 12 hours.
So if you're doing your pre-trip, pre-trip inspection, you have your start time when you're leaving that, your hub or whatever. If you're a CDL holder, commercial driver's license holder, you also have to have that separate book for your hours of service.
Well, if you stay within that, if you're going to claim that 100 air mile radius exemption, you could do it on your pre-trip report, which by the way is not required. The pre-trip is not required to be in writing. But if you do it in writing, which is a good thing, and you have your start time and end time and total hours on duty on there, you can match the requirements.
So I carry 2 books, I just wanted to.
Most people carry 2 books. 150 air mile radius, again, non-CDL vehicles, they give you a little bit more mileage before you have to fill out that logbook. Okay, intrastate hours of service exemptions. And Minnesota statute 61031 sub 2 provides an exemption from the hours of service if you are a private carrier, which I believe most of you will be. If you're operating in intrastate commerce, in other words, you don't leave the state, you stay entirely in Minnesota. You're transporting construction materials, tools, and or equipment from shop to job site to job site, and or job site to shop, and must be used for the new construction, remodeling, or repair of buildings, structures, or their appurtenances. So what is a building, structure, and appurtenance? Retaining wall is a structure. A bridge is a structure. Fountains are structures. Where it gets a little iffy is if you're doing driveways, you're doing doing the horticultural stuff, you're doing paver patio. Those are kind of gray areas. Somebody's looking at that and say, well, that's a structure, or it's an appurtenance to that house, it's an appurtenance to that building. You could make that argument. That's a little bit of a gray area though. So I just take caution. Use a little caution on that. Some more exemptions. If you are exclusively transporting, again, within the state of Minnesota, dirt or sod within an area having a 50-mile radius from the home post office of the person performing the transportation. Why they wrote it like that, I have no idea. That's an old exemption, but it's still on the books. Give you 50 miles transporting dirt and sod. Exclusively, though. Sand, gravel, bituminous asphalt mix, concrete ready mix, tile, mortar mix used for concrete block or tile, crushed block. Within a 50-mile radius, again. Exempt from hours of service entirely within the state of Minnesota. And you're going to find that in this book. For reference, take a look at that. A few more. Exclusively transporting pulpwood, cordwood, mining timbers, poles, post decorator, evergreens, wood chips, sawdust shavings, and bark. This is the weird thing that they put in there. From the place where the products are produced to the point where they are to be used or shipped. To make sure if you're going to use this exemption, you follow that to the T. Where are those evergreens coming from? Where are the wood chips coming from? Is it from where they were produced or not? So, 100 mile radius, covered that. 50. Working duty status. We're going to run out of time here, so I'm going to zip through. Hours of service limits. If you're using the logbook, let's cover that real quick. 11-hour rule may not drive more than 11 hours in a single work period. 14-hour rule may not drive after 14 hours of on-duty time. But 11-hour means behind the wheel, droning down the road. 14-hour rule means you can't drive after you've been on duty. So you go to work at 6 a.m., you got 14 hours to get your job done operating a commercial vehicle, and then you can't drive anymore. It doesn't say you can't work anymore, it says you can't drive.
Is that both inter and
Yes, both inter and intra.
11 hours?
Yep, 11-hour, but that's actual drive time. 14 means you can't drive after having been on duty for 14. So that hits folks sometimes. If you're going to put in a long day, you got to, sun is out for a long time here in the summer. You might be working a long, long day. And what they're looking at is, are you fatigued? So they're giving you 14 hours, and at that point you can't get back behind the wheel until you get 10 hours off.
Even if you're under 11, right?
Yeah, but you still can't drive after the 11th hour. So that's two different rules. So that 14 is made for folks who are not just driving, but maybe delivering, unloading, doing some work, still working 14 hours. At that point, you can't drive it. 60, 70-hour rule, driver cannot exceed 60 hours on duty, which includes driving in 7 days or 70 hours in 8 days. So again, this is mainly the over-the-road guys. They don't really like these rules all the while because when their wheels are turning, they're making money. But these are all safety related. Yeah, let's skip some of this stuff. ELDs, you probably all heard about ELDs. Electronic logging device that came into effect last year. And again, it's going to affect usually the folks who are driving cross country. So we won't spend a lot of time here because I would guess most of you don't have ELDs in your trucks. Anybody here do? The ELDs in their trucks? Yeah, we won't spend a lot of time here though. Just to say that the over-the-road drivers have to have an electronic logging device. They just turn that key, it's going to keep their hours of service for them electronically. And with a few annotations that they can put in, but they supposedly can't falsify their logs because of this. We found out they can. There's a way to cheat the system, so there's going to figure out how to do it. Device has to be registered with FMCSA, and there's like 400 different manufacturers of those right now. Some of them work well, some of them do not. It's all self-certification. It's a little bit of a mess right now, but things are getting better. Roadside violations are down in hours of service because of this. Vehicle maintenance, cover that real quick. You have a truck, keep records. Every bit of maintenance that you do, log it. Oil change, you put in a headlight, a turn signal, document it, put it in the file. Like you said, so one of your drivers crashes, there's a fatality, somebody comes out, they're going to want to make sure that truck was maintained. The only way you can prove that is if you keep records. So keep records. And you can't operate a truck that's likely to break down. You must maintain records of all inspections, repair, and maintenance. And receipts don't really cut it. That tells you bought a part, doesn't mean you put it in the truck. So document all of that. There are actually forms online. You can go to the website. I know the feds have them online. You can print them out. It's stuff to log your maintenance. Driver to inspect, we already covered that. Annual inspection, I think we covered that too. All vehicles, denominations 10,001 pounds or more in interstate commerce, 26,001 pounds or more in cross-state commerce. State of Minnesota gives you a little more leeway. Lighting, make sure all the lights work. Again, these are common violations that we see out there. not gonna spend a lot of time there. Brakes, something we also see. Brakes are required on all wheels. The exception of that is the trailers with a gross weight of 1,000 pounds or less on the trailer. Emergency brakes, breakaway brakes, that's the other thing. Check your breakaway brakes, make sure they're hooked up. Electric brakes, make sure the battery's charged. That's a very common violation. Look at that batteries. Some of those batteries are, well, some are good, some are bad. Generally, we see bad ones out on the roadside. Must be properly looked at. Tires, take a look at the tires. Steer axle, minimum 4/32 tread. Non-steer, 2/30 seconds. They can't be cut, they can't be flat, they can't be low, so that kind of thing. They won't get your tires. See this kind of thing regularly. Tires are all. Make sure you have fire extinguisher, 5 BC. Actually 10 BC if it's going to be hazardous material. The 5 BC required to be carried and mounted in the truck. Must be readily accessible and have spare fuses to protect it. Emergency equipment, 3 triangles. Just in case you break down one side of the road, you get 2 triangles out. Cargo securement. Go real fast here because we're pretty much out of time. Federal load securement requirements are based on the size and the weight. If you look in the federal regulations, and that's this little book here, it's very specific commodity requirements for logs, lumber, metal coils, paper, rolls, so on and so forth, crushed vehicles, rocks. Anybody heard about the boulder falling off last year? Caused a lot of problems. That boulder that fell off, I would venture to say was not properly secured. You don't want to get into that situation. Some of the things we found out on the road. Another line, you got the poles, the brakes, going into the back of the truck. Good. Trap hauler, notice no name and address. Or excuse me, no name and DOT number of the doors. That's an indication that the guy that operating that vehicle really doesn't know the safety rules. And that's just like a big flag out there when there's no name and DOT number. It's like, I don't know any. And there's another one of the farmer. He's got the big wheels. General securement rules. Each tie down must be adjustable. Tie downs must be in proper working order. No damage or leaking spots. No knots. Pitch protection. Got to be there if it's required. Heavy equipment. Bucket must be lowered. Secured to the vehicle. This is for equipment that's 10,000 pounds or more. Articulated vehicles must be locked. Minimum of 4 tie downs to be used to secure the vehicle in each corner. Securement of dirt, gravel, sand. And that's in the book too. You can take a look at that. If it's higher than that, it's got to be covered. It's really what we're talking about. Go really fast here. Road securement. The freeway over here actually. We're running short on time, so we keep going. I got a few more slides. Isn't that about doing here now? We'll keep going real quick. First, the driver's license, Class A. Combination of vehicles greater than 26,000 pounds with a trailer over 10,000 pounds. You need a commercial driver's license, Class A. Class B, vehicle is gross vehicle weight rating 26,001 pounds or more without the trailer. You can tow a trailer 10,000 pounds or less. but that's the big straight truck is a Class B. Class C, we talked about a little earlier, that is a transporting hazardous materials, considered a commercial motor vehicle. And different endorsements, restrictions. The one that comes up all the time is the air brake restriction. It's not an air brake endorsement, that's an air brake restriction. Can't operate a vehicle with air brakes if you have that designation on your license. Withdrawal of your driver's license CDL, we'll cover that real quick. You see that all the time. If you have a commercial driver's license and you fail to submit that medical examiner certificate to the DMV, they're going to send you a few notices out. If you still don't send it in, they're going to downgrade that license to a Class D. Then you're out on the road, you get stopped for a roadside inspection, you don't have a proper class driver's license. So keep an eye out for that. Drug and alcohol testing, again, we'll go real quick because we're pretty much out of time, but drug and alcohol testing and a commercial driver's license go hand in hand. If you have a commercial driver's license and required to because of the size of your truck and or trailer, you must be in a drug and alcohol testing program. And again, you see that all the time. Somebody gets in behind the wheel of a bigger truck because they went out and bought a bigger truck. They forget about the drug and alcohol testing program. That's probably where the majority of the violations we see come from. Folks either not having the program or they have a program but they're not maintaining their drug and alcohol program. Your drivers, if you have a commercial driver's license and operating vehicles requiring that commercial driver's license, those drivers got to be in the program. And the program has to be testing at currently 25% of the driver pool and for drugs and 10% for alcohol. Again, prohibited conduct we talked about, tests required, pre-employment testing. Number one, you hire a driver, make sure you get the results back from that pre-employment drug test before you put them out on the road. See that all the time. Send the guy in for a drug test, but then they put him behind the road, the test comes back 2 days later. It could even be negative, that's still a violation. You don't want it to come back positive because then you got major problems. So keep an eye on that. Post-crash testing, if the vehicle is a CDL vehicle, and there was a tow-away, injury treated away from the scene, or a fatality, these are reportable crashes only. You got to do the drug test and alcohol test post-crash. There's a chart, it's in the book. Anytime there's a human fatality, get that drug and alcohol test done. Bodily injury, immediately treated away from the scene, and the driver was issued a citation. Then you got to have the drug test. No citation for moving violation, don't worry about it. Same with disabling damage, got to have a citation attached to that. And the drug test is required. Random testing is covered. Reasonable suspicion. If you have a driver that shows up to work reeking of alcohol, you might want to give them a reasonable suspicion test. For alcohol, make sure you are trained. Every motor carrier has to have somebody, the supervisor dealing with the drivers, trained in reasonable suspicion. And again, that's missed a lot of times. If you do have a driver that tests positive, you can use them, but only after they've seen a substance abuse professional, have gone through treatment, and are adhering to the return to duty process. They're going to be subject to random tests on a regular basis set up by the substance abuse professional. Okay, roadside inspections. Just real quick, there's 5 different levels of roadside inspections. Level 1 is the one that's going to take about an hour, and they're going to crawl underneath the truck and do everything. Level 2 is just a walk-around inspection and deal with the driver. Level 3 is driver only. So, DOT compliance review. Just want to finish up here real quick. These are the reasons I mentioned earlier. Anytime you have a roadside violation, you have a DOT number, that score goes higher, higher in each one of those different areas. It could be unsafe driving, and that's for moving violations. It could be crash, company has multiple crashes, hours of service, vehicle maintenance. The score gets to a certain point in Washington, then they'll call us and say, somebody's got to go out and talk to these folks, see what's going on. What are the safety features that company has built into their system, dealing with their drivers, dealing with their trucks. And, yep,
Is this something we can do, or is it something?
if you have a DOT number, you can actually get into that system and take a look at your own scores, see where they are. So, good thing to watch. In fact, I recommend that you do that if you have roadside inspections, see where the violations are. I had one where up in Big Lake, I went into this company, and it was all based on this huge incident that happened in Chicago, where there was a tractor trailer and the guy was running from the police on Chicago and crashed into a bunch of people. He was on drugs, he had guns. It was just this major thing, so I ended up going up to Big Lake to talk to the company. Called him on the phone, I said, I'm coming out. He's like, yeah, okay. I get out there and we start going through stuff, and he goes, I don't think I ever had a driver in Chicago or a truck. So we looked a little closer at it, and it turned out whoever wrote up that inspection at the end had 2 digits of his DOT number turned around. So it really belonged to somebody else, yet that was sitting on the company record. And but I was already out there, started digging through his files. What was he missing? Drug and alcohol testing. He didn't have it. He was required to have it. And it cost him $2,000. That's a mandatory penalty. Not having drug and alcohol testing. Had he been looking at his report, he had seen that, he could have filed a challenge and said, that's not my driver. And I'd have never gone out there and he would have $2,000 that he was questions. We'll stop right here because we are out of time. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I know there's a lot of material in a short amount of time. But again, everything that I covered is in this book. There's actually more in here than I covered. And if you have any questions, on the back there's a phone number and a website. You can fire your questions off on the website, or you can just call and someone should answer the phone. If not, you leave a message and we'll get back to you. Other than that, that's about all I have, and it is lunchtime and then some.
You have a mini excavator. You have to have that bucket also strapped down along the 4 point.
And that's attached, is it locked?
Attached to the rock, but lower it down, you have to have that also strapped down.
If it's locked, I'd say no. You have 4 points in that. I think it's locked.
You do have older.
No matter what size.
Well, we went to one not long ago, and they said the new regulation this year,
All I do of
that
is
bucket has to have a strap, at least a strap on it.
Okay. Okay, well, it's good to know because I missed that. So it was a new regulation.
Yeah, he said it was like about a month ago, we were at something like this, he was talking about,
Okay.
making sure you have your bucket strapped on.
Great. Good to know. Any other questions? Okay.
I didn't know you said that he had a trailer shot because the chains weren't adjustable. Is that a valid rule?
Chains for
Yeah, he said that the officer did the inspection and said that the chains on the trailer, say it's like a 12,000-pound dump trailer, there's supposed to be, the linkages are supposed to be adjustable so that the chains were at the adequate tension.
Also, the ones that were on the trailer to the car. Yeah, they gotta be, it's kind of a judgment call there. They gotta have slack, so they're not gonna put undue tension. So
They said that it was
I don't
too
know
much.
about adjustable.
Okay, yeah, the officer said there's too much slack, so they're supposed to be able to tighten it up or something. I think it's adequate.
Are they supposed to be crossed?
Yes, supposed to be crossed.